Well, hey everyone, thanks for joining us. My name is Viktor. I am a protocol specialist over at Coinbase Cloud, which is formerly known as Bison Trails. Today I'm going to be moderating a panel with these fine speakers on privacy and interoperability. So to kick us off, would everybody please take a moment to introduce yourself and share a one-liner on what you've been working on as it relates to privacy and interoperability. Lisa, why don't we start with you and then go around?
Hi, everyone. My name is Lisa Cuesta, and I'm the head of business development at Aztec. Aztec is a privacy-centric L2 that offers users both gas savings and privacy by default. We've been live on mainnet since earlier this year. Our team is the team that invented Plonk, so basically the kind of becoming an industry standard for ZK snarks and allowing private applications on a public blockchain. And the newest product, which I'll talk about today, is Aztec Connect, which will allow people to do private transactions, private DeFi transactions.
Cool. Tori, you want to go next?
Yes. Hi, everybody. So I'm Tor. I'm the founder of Secret Foundation. We work on Secret Network. I used to be the head of growth at a company called Enigma, which also renamed, just like Bison Trails. They are now known as Secret Labs. They're over in Israel as the core development team. Foundation works on growth and business development for the ecosystem, as well as community engagement. We empower applications that are building on our ecosystem. We are a private, by default, smart contract layer one. We were the first layer one to launch with privacy preserving smart contracts back in September 2020. We completed that mainnet upgrade. So we've been over a year now with private smart contracts, and we've seen incredible stuff built across DeFi, and now especially on the NFT side, where private metadata and private ownership is essential to global adoption. So we're excited to use privacy to unlock usability and expand the design space for Web3 1,000-fold. And it's awesome to be on this panel with a bunch of other people who I believe are building with the same ethos and approach in mind, where privacy can enable usability for users across the entire world.
Thanks, Tor. Also, nice cap. Xiao, if I pronounced your name correctly, would you mind going next?
Hi, everyone. My name is Xiao. Compared to many people in the panel who are privacy experts, I do not know much about privacy, actually. My area is more on infrastructure and interoperability. So I actually started in crypto back in 2016 from the investment side. Initially, I was running VC fund, and we had some carve out for investing in fintech and blockchain. So that's how I got into the space. In 2019, because I'm a firm believer in crypto and I have an engineering background, started working on our first project called Meter. So it's a Ethereum scaling solution based on hot stuff consensus. And also one of the product we're offering is, we call it Meter Passport, is actually an interoperability solution. We share the infrastructure with many other projects. For example, SATA, Moonbeam, Ampleforce, and quite a few layer one projects and layer two projects as well. And during this process, we realized, there's a need for an abstraction layer for financial assets for interoperability. So we started this new project called Sumer. That's more like a visa for the multi-chain environment type of thing. So yeah, that's what I'm working on, and looking forward to learn from everyone here in the panel.
Thanks, Xiao. Jacob?
Hi, I'm Jacob from MetaMask. I lead operations and work on strategy and overall things at MetaMask. I've been with the team for a couple of years, and got to be a part of the extraordinary growth. For anyone that isn't familiar with MetaMask, which I suspect is not really anyone on this for this audience at least, we're the most universal and interoperable wallet with over 21 million monthly active users, well over 21 million, and we try to be the most unopinionated wallet. We want to be highly extensible, allow developers to build whatever they can imagine and dream, and to power use cases from DeFi to gaming to communities and DAOs to NFTs. Like, we never envisioned those use cases when we first started building MetaMask, but by being highly extensible and enabling others, we were able to help contribute to this really amazing ecosystem. When developers integrate with MetaMask, they get access to the most users and the most liquidity, which greatly helps the adoption and onboarding of their own apps.
Well, thanks, Jacob. And Xiao?
Hello, everyone. So my name is Xiao. I'm the founder of the Zcloak Network project. Zcloak Network basically tries to solve one problem. That is, we know that in Web 3.0, we want people to take control of their own data. But is there a way for people to use their data and get services from third parties without sharing their data or sending their data to those parties? So Zcloak networks try to answer this question, and we believe one of the ultimate ways to preserve user privacy is that not sharing data or sending data in the first place. Because if you don't send your data to other people, there's basically no way for them to leak it or misuse it. So this is about Zcloak network.
Amazing. Thanks, Xiao Zhang. Well, it's lovely to have all of you here. We have a really diverse group of characters. So we prepared some great questions. Not all the questions will be relevant to everybody, but I hope there's enough for everybody. A little bit of something for everybody. The first thing that I think is like most important to be asked is that net privacy lost in Web 2. And so for the privacy advocates out there, do you think the outcome will be different in Web 3? And if so, why?
I'll let the man with the privacy hat kick us off.
Well, that's just picking on me. No. Oh, you scared her away. So here's how we always tell the story about privacy in Web3, which is that Web3 makes a lot of promises that really only privacy can deliver. And a lot of the narrative of Web3 has been around empowering end users and permissionless applications and making sure that everything is usable and secure. And I know that the narrative is working for attracting people into the space. They all have that ethos. But then I read these journalistic articles that say, we should put all the voting on the blockchain. It would be so much better if we had our vaccine passports on the blockchain. It would be, and like I read this and I'm just, I have like these like mini panic moments where I'm worried that somebody very serious in government is going to read these things and think that this is what blockchain technology is optimized to do. But fundamentally, it isn't. Blockchains were built to be auditable and transparent, and they can provide, a provable record of ownership. What they don't do is protect our right to privacy for those records and ownership. And what ultimately ends up happening is you have privacy nightmares that are worse than anything that happened in the Web 2 world, because instead of waiting for Facebook to leak all of your data, it already happened. The challenge here is on education. If you don't know that blockchains already work this way, you're going to trust them to do things that you should not trust a blockchain to do. Blockchains are part of a larger Web3 stack. They're part of that ecosystem. It includes native access control like we try to do with Secret, but it also includes things like decentralized storage. And when you understand how all these components can fit together and still be decentralized, you understand how they can be combined to empower end users and not also compromise them. But if you think just one blockchain is going to do everything and we don't need second layer solutions or other private by default chains, then we're not doing a good job of education for end users or for developers or for governments or for enterprises. We need to let them know that this is not what blockchains were meant to do. But if we combine them with these groundbreaking technologies, which many of the people on this panel are building, then we can actually get the promise of Web3 without making that surveillance dystopia version of Web3 that I would consider to be like the worst thing that could possibly happen, because it would just mean not only did we waste our time here, we actively ushered in something that was demonstrably worse for end users and for the people around the world that we were actually trying to empower in the first place.
Got it. Great answer. Anybody else want to supplement that?
Yeah, I agree with the point that like blockchains themselves don't have an opinion about privacy. It's the users and the developers that have to have an opinion about it. And so I think if you look at users, you can start to see with Web 2 just the kind of cracking in the trust in these establishments, the users becoming more aware of the implications of losing their privacy, and you're starting to see that backlash turn into action. Apple earlier this year gave people the choice. Do you want to share your data across apps? And people, a lot of the times, are choosing no. And I think it's because of that awareness and that kind of new indication from users that they do want privacy that will put them in a good position to be able to evaluate different solutions in Web3 that will give them that choice. I think the second part is that the tech is now ready to enable this kind of choice. Companies like Secret and Aztec and Zcloak are giving developers the tools to be able to build private applications. And without that, then like you wouldn't be able to even have this conversation. And then lastly, I think even more kind of practically and building on Tor's point is like, we have less privacy in Web3 than we do in Web2. Like at least in Web2, these things are stored with AWS. You don't really like have to worry about it too much. But none of that is true in Web3. Everything is auditable, everything is visible, and there's entire companies that are being built on mining this data, analyzing it, and then being able to interpret it and share that information with folks that are interested in surveillance. So we have less privacy in Web3 right now than we do in Web2, and I just don't think that's going to stick, particularly as you're thinking about mainstream adoption and new use cases that aren't currently possible without privacy. Like no one would want their bank accounts, their vendor transactions, their salaries on chain. And I think that if you are able to put those things on chain and build cool applications on top of it without actually revealing the underlying data, like that will win over the siloed Web2 architecture that exists. So I think it's a confluence of a bunch of things, but overall, I'm pretty bullish on users and developers and just the overall ecosystem demanding privacy.
Got it. Very cool. And we're gonna talk about a little bit more of the technical component in one of the other questions. But one of the interesting points that Lisa mentioned is just around, Apple had a choice earlier this year to enable a greater degree of privacy. And I think one of the things that we're finding is that with many of the builders on this call, but also many of the builders in the community, the ethos is much more private. And so you start enabling those options by default earlier on, which changes the trajectory of how all products in the ecosystem are built. But another question I wanted to ask is, when we think about privacy, but also like frankly right now, interoperability, it can be really expensive and hard for the average user to understand. Not only how to interact with them, but how to make the best use of them, what they can or cannot do. How are your projects making it more accessible to the average user when it comes to privacy and interoperability? Like, how are you guys solving these challenges?
I'd like to jump in on the previous question as well, and maybe to weigh in on that as well. When we talk about Web3, I think especially people in the early days of the ecosystem had a tendency to sort of combine the Web3 vision together to assume it was equivalent or the same thing as the protocol layer, and instead of looking at the entire Web3 tech stack. So, while blockchains are pseudonymous, like the Ethereum mainnet is pseudonymous, everything is also transparent in various ways. But the Web3 tech stack involves everything from the client-side wallet, which allows people to have sets of permissions to say like this site can know about these accounts and it can't know about these accounts, and it is a system of permissions, and it abstracts away from the protocol layer a lot of, it essentially serves as a permission system for the web. And part of what's so powerful about that is that it also creates the basis for a whole series of other economic models, so that the incentives are not surveillance. The incentives are commerce and communities and joint ownership by the people who use things with the people who participate in those systems. And for us in MetaMask, we really believe in a multi-chain future that is totally permissionless and allows people to use different protocols and different dApps for different purposes, everything from ZK platforms and ZK protocols to things which are inherently they're inherently transparent, largely like the Ethereum mainnet, is used for high value transactions and as a tethering point for layer 2s and side chains to secure assets in the most decentralized way. So for us, like in MetaMask, we want to be the most privacy centric and ethical wallet. We allow people to opt out of any form of analytics during onboarding, and that's the default that people can choose. We have opted not to shove a bunch of centralized APIs into our wallet, which some of our competitors have done, where they can, in the short term, provide a slightly better user experience by leaking lots of data to these third-party APIs. But we're able to instead have a system that's based on permissions and consent, and making it where we're surfacing as much information as possible for the user and allowing them to choose what they want in a highly consensual and intentional intentional way.
Got it. Well, so I was going to say you answered both the previous question and a little bit of this question. I thought it was really well done, Jacob.
Thanks.
And sorry, Xiao, I'd love to hear from you as well.
Yeah, I want to answer a question about how to make it accessible for the users of our technology. I think for us, especially in our project, we try to get back to the basics. Like we want to preserve privacy, and we want people to use, like for example, their identity data to in different services, and how can we do that? So we get back to the very basic things that we have already in the old times, like our identity card or our medical record. These things are physical, and they are stored in the user space. So they were not stored in centralized servers. And we use technology like DID and verifiable credentials to give the control of this data back to the users. So I can store my identity card or my driver's license in my cell phone, and we find a way to try to use this data in a privacy preserving manner. So I can prove some attributes about my identity card, for example, to a DeFi project or to some stablecoin transfer application. So in such a way that you don't have to send your data to third parties, but you can still prove some attributes about yourself. I think this is quite relevant, not only in the age of Web 3.0, but also we know that regulators are looking at the crypto space quite closely recently, and there could be requirement for KYC or even travel rule, this kind of regulation that will apply to the crypto space. So these are the possible solutions for this kind of requirements, and we try to make it as accessible for the users as possible, try to integrate this service with the existing wallet, for example, MetaMask and other cell phone wallet. Yeah, I think it's very important to make the users feel that what they use today is similar to what they are already used to, like a physical card, a driver's license. This concept are easier to understand instead of giving them the very difficult concepts in the very beginning.
Yeah, that's a great answer. And I actually have a little bit of follow-up question. So something Jacob mentioned earlier is the use of external APIs and other products that might leak data. And it's almost like very difficult to avoid it when you're building any kind of application, avoiding using the AWSs or the G Suites or whatever, especially when a user is handling their own data or so on. How does everybody think about, how much of the stack is actually able to be trustless and able to be within the control of users, and how much are you like forced to use other products and services in order to have a competitive product? Like, how do you guys make those trade-offs? And anybody can answer, not just Jacob and Xiao.
Sure, I can weigh in. Like I think that for us it has to be, what I was mentioning was user intention. So you could argue that everything that happens in Web 2 is consensual. Like you sign some terms of service when you signed up for something that you didn't read, and which included like very long legal language that you were, you had no opportunity to really review, and everyone knows that you didn't review. But for us, we want to surface the details of what people are deciding, and in an unopinionated way, allow them to choose the things that they agree that they want, and to really make user intention a cornerstone of our UX principles. So, for example, a lot of people have argued, like, why don't you just stick all of these third-party networks into MetaMask, and particularly one of those, Binance Smart Chain. It has, not only is it a relatively centralized chain, or very centralized chain, it also, its RPC endpoints are hosted by Binance, and so a challenge that many people don't know is, like, when you add a third-party RPC endpoint, you're sharing your account list with that chain, and then you're sharing all of your account balance and all of your data to the Binance organization. And for us, like, we want these sort of things to be really, they have to be, there are people that that are fine with that, and the people that are fine with that and that want to do that, they should be able to do that. But the decisions need to be surfaced to people, and they need to be based on user intention and highly consensual. And we want to provide a user experience that's based on those kinds of principles, and then also allow, like, for people that want to host their own node and that want to completely opt out of sharing information with any sort of third-party system, like, we want to enable that too, and to make it really easy and delightful to do so.
So I obviously love MetaMask's mission, and they've been more successful really than pretty much any other user-facing application in Web3, and they have millions of users as a result. One thing that I'll say is that when you give users ultimately the choice about what is done with their data, not only do they need to be informed about that choice, but, like, it's hard to not editorialize about it on some level. Like, at some point, if you're trying to educate them, it's also going to sound like you're taking a biased opinion towards another network. And if you say, Binance Smart Chain, please note, has 20 validators and all of them are CZ, that's going to sound like editorializing, even if it's fundamentally true. And for most users, that's actually a trade-off that they're completely comfortable with, because they're there for the yield, but they're there to have it feel like Web 2. They're dipping their toes. They don't necessarily have the resources to participate fully in the Ethereum ecosystem, where things are more expensive from a gas basis. So the trade-offs that we made in the secret ecosystem is, we made it clear that our message is all about privacy by default. And when you start using the chain, you don't have to wonder whether it's not privacy by default for some specific, application of that chain. The application will have to tell you if they are not private by default, and you'll be able to see publicly when something is not private by default. We're just shifting expectations, whereas the expectation in the Web3 world for EVM chains currently is everything is public by default, and it's going to be really expensive or not terribly composable to suddenly make it private by default. And you're going to break some of the connections somewhere, because you're going to have to do something to make that trade-off. So our approach to privacy plus interoperability has been, make the whole thing a layer 1 ecosystem, but build it in a layer 1 ecosystem that is highly modular and interoperable by design, which is Cosmos. So we're a Cosmos chain, we're a Tendermint chain, we've integrated IBC. That allows us to now interoperate with these other networks, first with token transfers and then with cross-chain contract calls, to be able to say, we want to be the privacy hub for this entire universe, and if you do something only on secret, your privacy is guaranteed. Once you start bridging to these other networks, you're going to do things that are public by default over there, and we make no guarantees. But anything you're doing on secret, once you bring yourself into the privacy and safety of that world, that's what we want to be able to promise you. So that was our approach to it, and we bridged to other networks as well. We bridged to Ethereum, we bridged to Binance Smart Chain, we bridged to Monero. Zcash is moving to proof of stake and is moving to a Cosmos model. So there's going to be a lot of continued experimentation and exploration. And I definitely agree with the one thing that Jacob said, which is that really fundamentally it is about user education. They should understand the choice they're making, and they should be empowered to make that choice.
Yeah. And actually, on that note, I'd like to move on to the next question, because it touches on that, and Tor already kind of gave his answer, so maybe other folks will want to chime in. But one of the great things that we really like about the crypto ecosystem is the composability. And so how do each of you strike the balance when building your solutions between committing and building on top of an existing ecosystem versus building your own from scratch?
Yeah, maybe like I try to combine my answer to some of the previous questions as well. So like first about the privacy in Web2, I think in the Web2 world is mainly like the entire Web2 world is built on top of like you can gather either traffic or profit from like people's privacy essentially. For example, we human beings have the desire to like be gossip and pick other people's privacy, right? So that's like a human nature. People want to build things, profit from it. So one thing I think still exists in Web3 is we need to find an application that allow either to gather traffic or gather profit to help developers to build on top of privacy. So an application that basically drives these factors in order for it to really proliferating. In terms of like things that making interoperability more like accessible to average users. Yeah, I mean, that's one of the things we've been struggling when we run our infrastructure as well. Because in order to run a decentralized infrastructure, by default, it's gonna be like expensive. Because you want to incentivize all the like, for example, relayers, like validators, to be able to support their infrastructure to be decentralized. However, like the use from users' perspective, especially majority of users' perspective, they only want to have low cost. So when people comparing interoperability solutions or bridging solutions, probably one of the biggest thing people are considering is the cost. So somehow we have to address like both problems in the same solution. So that's one of the challenges we have to address in our like design. So for example, our first generation product is more for providing the capability. The second generation product we're working on is more to address both the decentralization issue and the cost issues. And also like for user to be like able to fully use the multi-chain internet, financial internet. I mean, a lot of things have to be like addressed, and a lot of education has to be made. I think like one of the issue is the existing wallets. Because from every day there's people in our Telegram group asking like, what happened to my fund when because they were just thinking, in order to send funds from one chain to another chain, you just need to send to another address, which may exist in a different chain. So a lot of people have that misconception. So somehow I think the existing user experience need to be improved to address that. One of the tiny steps we have made was we created like a multi-chain wallet that people can see their balances on different chains and able to move around different chains. But it's still like a very baby step. I think fundamental things have to be made on the user experience side. And in terms of like modular and composability, that's the thing we believe the most. The entire crypto ecosystem is about composability. It's like every project is only like a small piece of the entire system, but you can grow your ecosystem, grow your user base by working with other projects, by making your product more modular. That's a whole reason that we believe, for example, when we look at the stack, we believe the bridges and routers should be just the physical infrastructure, just like the existing internet. It should be just like your home router. No one should be care about what kind of operating system running on top of a bridge, right? But nowadays, most of the bridging solutions are looking at like running complicated liquidity layer on top of that. It's like running Windows on top of your home router. So we want to separate the layers so the entire cross-chain and the interoperability infrastructure become more composable. So that's why we believe like even we ourselves are running a bridge infrastructure, we believe there should be like a commodity product in the future as long as it's secure. But on top of that, the liquidity layer should be an application layer that's composable and make it easy for developers to build other Legos on top of it. So that's why we started working on the Sumer project, which is the liquidity layer abstraction.
Got it. That's super helpful. And so Tor went from, created their own and now interlinking. Xiao is a great believer in composability, creating this liquidity abstraction. Who else wants to chime in?
I can chime in. So I think, when we look at the privacy solutions that have been created kind of historically, one of the shortcomings is just the lack of functionality and like ecosystem built around those privacy solutions. And so when we came to market, the thing that we thought about was how can we not have that kind of cold start issue or that network effect issue. And the way that we did that was by building on top of a thriving ecosystem. And so Aztec, which is L2 in the Ethereum ecosystem, benefits from the fact that there's lots of development and lots of folks that are already transacting on mainnet. And the way that we're coming to market with Aztec Connect is we are aggregating similar transactions from Aztec users to interact with layer 1 DeFi. And the way that we do that is through our ZK rollup. So we're batching the transactions and then through bridge contracts, sending that to mainnet, and then splitting the gas cost across all of the users that are batched in that transaction. And so we like to joke that users come for the privacy, stay for the gas savings, because the early adopters are going to be more privacy centric, but then over time, as that network effect grows and there's more users splitting that gas cost, it's going to be cheaper and it's just going to make more sense to come to Aztec than even the other L2s. And the thing that we're really excited about with Aztec Connect is that we can be the first community-driven L2. So if you look at other L2s, they have to work really closely with the core teams of the DeFi protocols to launch to their L2, rebuild liquidity on their L2. Whereas in Aztec's case, we're actually interacting directly with existing smart contracts and existing liquidity. And we're doing that through these bridge contracts that can be written permissionlessly by anyone in the community. It could be our team. It could be a community member that's just really interested in building this integration. It could be the core teams themselves. But the fact that anyone can build it means that we can be really community driven and demand driven in terms of where people are looking for this kind of privacy layer in DeFi. So yes, I think we're one end of the spectrum where we've plugged in directly to an existing ecosystem, and we're benefiting from the fact that, right now there is demand for lower gas costs and demand for private transactions. And so Aztec Connect is bridging those two demands and offering both through our bridge contracts.
Amazing, thanks. Xiao.
Yeah, quick comment on this question. So we started in Polkadot because the substrate framework for building a blockchain is quite flexible. So we get easily started from there. And it is also possible for us to bridge our service to other parachains in the Polkadot ecosystem. But when we are building our first real product, we call it ZK Pass. It is used for helping people to meet regulation requirements. We understood that there are a lot of needs in other blockchains too, like Ethereum, Polygon, Solana. And that is also what we are doing. We're trying to bridge our service to other blockchains. So basically we go as where the users need to go. So if there's a requirement for users to use our service in a specific chain, we'll bridge our service over there.
Got it. Super helpful. And then Xiao, maybe like a really quick follow-up for you. I'd be super curious. And then this is gonna be the last one, and then we'll have Sarah advise. But when you guys think about bridging to multiple chains, how do you think about it from the perspective of like, what if a user uses multiple chains? Do they have that shared identity that they're able to like ferry with them, or do they end up having kind of like these multiple implementations that they have to manage?
Yeah, for our application, and I think that's also the benefit of our user-centric approach. So basically, everybody stores his or her own data in their own data wallet. So whichever chain they go, they can generate a proof to the smart contract or dApps in those chains that they meet the requirement for using this application. And so I think this approach is a lot easier than deploying everything in separate chains. So that's really the approach we're taking right now, user-centric, really put the data in the user's hands.
Yeah, totally agree. And I think that makes it a lot easier to have that portability. There's actually a bunch of other questions I wish I could ask all of you, but we do have to wrap up. So before we go, can everybody please go around the room, maybe like in the same order, and just kind of share really quickly about where people can find you and your projects? Lisa, you want to kick us off?
Sure. Our website is aztec.network, but if you want to use Aztec, you can go to zk.money, and you can find me on Twitter at Lisa Cuesta, Cuesta.
Tor, you're muted.
Me, privacy hat. Yeah. If you want to follow Secret Network, it's at Secret Network on Twitter. The website is scrt.network. If you want to become a secret agent and defend Web3 privacy, you go to scrt.network/agents, and we send you cool hats. You want to follow me? I'm just at Tor Bear. We have dozens of applications you can get started with. We've got an NFT marketplace launching on Friday. Just come hang out. We're really fun, I swear. We all talk like this. We all wear this hat, and we all have cats.
Yeah, and if you come to Chicago, Tor will take you off for some great pizza.
Yes, I extend that to everyone. Yeah. But Viktor first.
Xiao.
Yeah, you can find us at Sumer, SUMER.money. And also you can follow our first project, meter.io, meter.io. My Twitter is my full name, Xiao Zhu. And yeah, looking forward to interact with everyone.
For MetaMask, people can find it at metamask.io. Strongly recommend going directly to the MetaMask site. Don't rely on search engines to find critical software like MetaMask or really any dApp. They're really subject to phishing and things like that. So the site is metamask.io. You can find me on Twitter. I'm JacobC_ETH. You can't put a dot in your name on Twitter. Would love to talk and have a conversation with anyone.
Yeah, so for Zcloak Network, the website is just zcloak.network, and our Twitter handle is at Zcloak Network. The DM is open, so please feel free to shoot any message if you want to. We would love to talk more about privacy issues with everybody.
Amazing. Well, thank you all so much for taking the time. Really appreciate it. And I hope everybody has a wonderful rest of your day. Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Bye-bye.